So I'm Jaron Benjamin. I'm with an organization called Housing Works. We're based out of New York, and that's right, New York, yeah. And our mission is to end the dual crises of homelessness and AIDS, so tall order. I'm going to talk briefly about a campaign that I actually moved to New York to run, which would fix a major problem in New York's rental assistance program for people living with HIV and AIDS. Before I talk about the campaign, I think it's important to talk about the history of the epidemic, which some people probably already know has cost, just in the United States, more than 650,000 lives, according to the CDC, which is phenomenal, it's astronomical, more than any casualty number we've ever had in any war, right? So big epidemic, but there was a huge turning point in this long, dark road. And that was 1991 when Magic Johnson announced that he had an HIV diagnosis. And there are a lot of people around the nation, myself included, since I had just lost an uncle 3 years prior to the epidemic, that thought, whoa, we're looking at a dead man walking. But the vibrant life that he has led since then has really proved something that a lot of the clinicians have been telling us a long time, that if you stabilize somebody's life, you give them access to health care, you give them food, and then a roof over their heads, there are many healthy days in front of them, which I think is a huge lesson to learn. And New York City actually learned that lesson very quickly. They embraced the idea and actually devoted an entire division of welfare to providing services for low-income people living with AIDS. And especially through their rental assistance program, the only city in the United States where you have rental assistance for people living with AIDS, had a huge problem, though. It turned out that people that had supplemental income, so we're talking about veterans, we're talking about disabled people that had supplemental income had no affordable housing protection. So these folks were having to make choices between food, healthcare, and their homes. And these 10,000 New Yorkers were constantly on the brink of homelessness and constantly on the brink of their health system just bottoming out. So sounds like a pretty easy campaign to run, right? Convince the government to give you $30 million more, which according to the Bloomberg administration. So, give us more money and we'll save some lives. That's easy. Everybody here does that, right? Any community organizer, you run a campaign like that. Well, surprise, it didn't work, just on that alone. I'll never forget the first face-to-face meeting I had with Governor Patterson, first closed-door meeting I had with then Governor Patterson, after the bill had passed both houses in New York. And I told him, I started with this, Governor Patterson, there's a bill on your desk that if you sign this bill, you're going to help save the lives of 10,000 New Yorkers. And he, without flinching, then said, son, I know that there are a lot of mistakes that I've made in the state, and I've cost more people than that their lives. It was a really good thing that we had very solid data and we had done our homework. We had foiled lots of data from the city and the state, from divisions that weren't talking to each other. We knew how many people this affected. We knew how much they were spending. They didn't even know how much they were spending on rehousing, on eviction costs, and all this stuff, right? They had no idea how much money they were spending. And we were able to do something incredible. Instead of the state talking about how much money they were going to spend when they were starting to draw up their budget, they started to use our numbers and our language. It hadn't been done before in New York State, where they talked about the return on investment. And that's what good, solid data that can be collected across divisions can do. Here's a picture of a very good friend of mine, Ramon Velasquez, who helped run the campaign. And he was at the front of so much of our work. He even helped us put together a participatory research project that showed what happened to people after they lost their homes, how they became high Medicaid users, how much money they were costing the city and state. And so it showed that there was another $20 million in Medicaid savings to be had. It helped us build a tidal wave of evidence. And even though Ramon Velasquez didn't make it to see this bill pass, and even though I lost way too many campaign leaders on this campaign, we won. A little bit more than a year ago, the state finally passed the law that protected some of the most vulnerable New Yorkers. And that tidal wave became even more more irresistible because we had linked divisions that hadn't been talking to each other before. And they started to realize that, if we test more people, link those people to care, and make sure that they have services so they can stay retained in care, we can actually end the AIDS epidemic without a cure. Talk about an impossible dream. We called the campaign the Impossible Dream because one of our own bill sponsors once told me, I don't know why you moved here to work on this campaign because it's never going to happen. And so many told us it would never be done. And I'm sure so many people have said, until you develop a cure for AIDS, you're never going to see the end. Well, we bend the curve, we stop people from transmitting the virus, and we end the AIDS epidemic. Governor Cuomo, last Pride, shocked the world when he came out and said, New York State is going to end the AIDS epidemic in New York by 2020. Big deal. Huge deal. Makes him look like a phenomenal visionary leader. The other thing that he really loves is the fact that we were able to show him, using his own numbers, they're going to save $4.5 billion with a B dollars in Medicaid costs alone, right? Huge, and it's impossible for him to refuse that. Washington State very soon followed suit. We're working with other states around the country. In order to find out more about this campaign, in order to get involved, just go to housingworks.org, click on Advocate. You can learn all about the AIDS-Free campaign. Thank you very much. I'm Jaron Benjamin. Sorry for going a little bit over. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the conference.